Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Um, it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to our third global webinar series hosted by TCAM Campus. Today we gather to explore the topic of AI in education and research. It is a privilege to introduce our distinguished speaker for today's session, a thought leader and innovator in industrial engineering, education, and technology. Mr. Felix Verroya has made transformative contributions to the fields of learning and research. Mr. Verroya is the founder of Ask Lex PH Academy, a platform that has delivered cutting-edge training to over 25,000 students and professionals, empowering them with critical 21st century skills in innovation, analytics, and sustainability. A certified Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt, professional industrial engineer, and associate Asian engineer, he brings unparalleled expertise in continuous improvement and operational excellence. An international author, consultant, and speaker, Mr. Verroya has been recognized with numerous awards, including the Asia CEO Awards, Young Leader of the Year, and the Lean Six Sigma Award by the IEOM International Society. His passion for education and technology is evident in his projects, such as creating free e-learning resources for lifelong learners. Today, Mr. Verroya will delve into the transformative potential of artificial intelligence in education and research, sharing insights drawn from his extensive experience and visionary outlook. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Mr. Felix Verroya.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Purni, for that kind introduction. Let me just share my screen. So, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are joining. I'm coming from the Philippines, by the way. So, good evening from the Philippines. It's about 9:15 in the evening here in the Philippines. And I hope that you are all good this particular time of the day. So again, thank you TIIKM Campus for inviting me to share some thoughts and insights about how AI or artificial intelligence in a broader sense of education 4.0 is transforming learning and discovery. So again, my name is Felix Concepcion Viroya. I'm the founder and CEO of Aztec Speech Academy. Just like what our host mentioned, we are in the mission of making lifelong learning accessible and sustainable for the Filipinos and the rest of the world. So just to jump into our discussion, I hope you can hear me clearly. We're gonna talk about AI, of course, and we need to revisit some definitions or description. And I'll give you some use cases of how AI is being applied in both education and research. And this will cut across different segments of education, as we may already know, from the collegiate or the undergraduate up until to graduate or the professional education as well as research. And then we'll talk also about various types of applicable AI in this particular space. And we will be also talking about some frameworks for policy making since one fact that I've noticed is that, or at least in the Philippines, and even I go outside in the regional landscape in Southeast Asia, is that there are no, at least to what I know as of this particular moment, no specific policy on how AI can be integrated in several domains of the industry, specifically education. But later on, I'll share with you some frameworks that can be of course, be basis of this initiative for policymaking. And then we're gonna talk also some use cases on data collection, data analysis. I'm gonna show you some actual demonstration and what will be the challenges in terms of adoption and the future of AI in education and research. Okay, I'm not quite sure if you can send your questions or messages via Zoom chat, but I think our host would be kind enough to solicit or to housekeep the questions as they come in, and there will be some portion towards the end of this session for the Q&A. All right. So let me start by sharing this particular article that is published in the World Economic Forum under Education and Skills, dated April 28, 2024. And it says the future of learning and how AI is revolutionizing education 4.0. So as you may already know, World Economic Forum publishes a lot of good research that gives us insight on what are the things that are happening around us. Now, in this particular report, this is anchored to what has been started as Education 4.0. So, Education 4.0, if you're quite familiar with Industry 4.0, of course, this is the integration of emerging technologies. I would not say emerging already, but because it's something that's already happening, have happened to some industries, and some people are now moving into Industry 5.0 in some developed countries. So does the same thing applies and has been, I would say, localized in terms of its application to education. So it became Education 4.0, as the subtitle suggests, ensuring emerging technologies improve education quality. So Education 4.0 is a forward-thinking framework for teaching and learning that equips learners with the skills, attitudes, and values essential for the future and the future use cases of technology plus education. So just to give us a little bit more context on where we are anchoring this particular discussion for this day, I will be showing you a video from World Economic Forum. Let me know if you can. I would be asking the help of our host to check whether the audio is audible.
Everybody knows that technology is moving quickly and changing our world at an ever-accelerating pace, but our education system is not.
Learning to learn is probably the most important skill. You need new skills to be successful in school, work, and in life. And so creating a curriculum where students develop a love of learning is number one.
We need to rethink the education system to produce not just students who do rote memorization and answer multiple choice questions, but critical thinkers, problem solvers, students who have creativity, collaboration, and digital skills.
We see right now that around us, the competencies of the children in many countries are declining. What do we need to change? Really put the money in the first years. Research shows us that by the age of 2, already the ground is laid.
Our education system needs to prepare students for a world that is surrounded by technology. Every student should learn computer science because no matter what field you want to go into, there's not a single area you can think of that is not being impacted in some fashion.
We have large amounts of data at our fingertips. So you need to understand how you take data and create views with it to make good decisions. Forecasting, outcomes. It may be finance. It may be projections. There are all kinds of different ways we would be applying large data sets to solving problems. So data analysis is really now a basic skill. Then there are AI skills that you need to start to understand.
AI is not just a technology. It's not something I choose to use or not to use. It will be in every part of our daily life. It will be in every company's life. So we need to be ready to understand it and use it. And to understand AI so far is not part of our formal training we get.
There's now many, many examples of research that show students learning the same thing with AI and learning it better than learning it without AI. The solution isn't just let the kid do all of their work with AI and just hand in, here's what AI said. You need actually a well thought out curriculum, a well thought out approach where students try their hand at something without AI and then try it with AI and critique what the AI did and learn from the mistakes of the AI. The beauty of AI is that it can also help teachers create individualized education programs for students. They're doing some of the most important work of raising our children, and they simply don't have enough hours in the day for all the things that the education system expects of them. But with additional training, AI can actually help with that. Reskilling is critical because most of today's workers are not familiar with these things. But when I think about reskilling, what I think about is the 1.5 billion students in our primary and secondary education system. Why don't we give them the important skills while they're in that system today?
Last year, we did a global survey that said 50% of students don't think a career in tech is for them and don't know where to start learning, even if they're interested. So at IBM, we have made our Skills Build program available to high school students and college students and adult learners. It's free learning paired with digital credentials. Not everyone has the opportunity to go to formal schooling who is talented and capable and interested. And so we've really looked at skilling and tried to take that forward.
Education and lifelong learning is at the core of the prosperity of countries. We can see from research that 2/3 of the growth difference between countries comes from how skilled is their labor force. So reskilling is actually something that is needed today more than ever. And we can only do that together because only in the companies is the knowledge actually where we need special training.
When it comes to reskilling, there's an important need for collaboration for employers to provide not only funds, but apprenticeships, internships, employment pathways, learning pathways for adults to basically develop the important skills. Education ultimately is the job of the government, and it's important for businesses to weigh much more heavily on governments on the need for education to evolve with the skills, not just the future, but the skills of today.
All right. All right. So thank you for watching this particular clip. So let me go back to my presentation. And that is something that these three authorities in the field of AI technology and education being integrated is giving us or are giving us. Now, if I don't know if you can type your thoughts about the video, but if you can share in the chat, or maybe you can self-reflect on what really is the role of these technologies and how we transform the landscape of education coming from the different segments that we are in contact with, either it be from primary, secondary, to the college level, to the graduate level, to the professional education and whatnot. So really, you can see that these people are championing the integration of the current technologies that we have, especially, let's say, AI, to this particular landscape. Now, in the same source from the World Economic Forum, these are the top 10 skills on the rise. And as far as I can remember, as early as probably 7 or 8 years ago, I started always looking or referring to this particular list so that I also update myself in terms of what are the skills that I need to basically look into and to equip myself with. So says here is number one is creative thinking, analytical thinking, technological literacy, curiosity and lifelong learning, resilience, flexibility, agility, all the way to service orientation and customer service. If you can see, if you have been following this published report, you see that some or most of this are not in the the list for about like 5 years ago. For example, curiosity and lifelong learning is never a mentioned skill like 5 or 7 years ago. It has just become part of the list just recently, maybe 2 years ago. And you can see also here very specifically technological literacy on number three, and on number seven, AI and big data. So really, this is the future that we're looking at. Okay. Now, so what is AI? Let's just revisit quickly. AI, as prescribed by several sources, refers to the simulation of human intelligence in machines that can learn, reason, and self-correct. And when we talk about AI, we will be hearing several popular or buzzwords like machine learning, natural language processing or NLP, and even computer vision. I don't know for your cases, but I've been using a lot of AI as tools in the conduct of my work, both in the professional education sector and as well as doing my research, because I'm currently doing my PhD in industrial engineering, and I'm currently writing my dissertation paper on a very emerging topic based on the feedback from the journal that we're submitting our my paper. So it's really hard for me, for example, to come up with RRLs or review of related literatures. That is one thing that I will be sharing in a short while. But yeah, artificial intelligence is really something that everyone is using, not only in the education space. Now, why do we need AI in education and research? Number one would be the data-driven insight. I know for a fact that everyone here, if you are in the education sector or in the research areas or research practice, the insights that we are publishing through our papers are data driven. But when we talk about, of course, if there is a tool or set of tools or technology that could provide the insights faster, easier, okay, of course we would want to do that. We would want to take that path, right? And coming from the education sector alone, the data that we get from the students or from the learners, if we use data-driven insight integrated with AI, we can provide personalized and data-rich learning experiences. If you can remember from the video, it has been shared that um, the personalization of pathways of learning is one of the things that the industry, not only the education sector, but also the industry after the learners have graduated from the universities should be providing. Next would be enhanced learning tools. So of course, if you have data that you can use to model certain algorithms or to use certain algorithms to create the models, then we can have an enhanced learning system which offers adaptive and accessible education for diverse kind of learners. Because one thing that I've also seen as a difficulty in the work that we do here in the professional education is that the learning style and preferences of learners really shifts from one type of learner to the other. So you cannot provide the same kind of material just like before, because also the learning style is now shifting because of the technology that is available. That's number two. Number three would be the accelerated adoption. And I think everyone would agree if I would say that COVID really accelerated the adoption of so many things in this world. And one thing is the application of certain technologies that we've mentioned earlier. Now, I'm not quite sure if you're using Gen AI right now, but I don't have the figures, but just by looking at probably the community and the space that I'm working with, probably around 8 out of 10 is using Gen AI, or maybe about 100%, but maybe 7 or 8 people out of 10 people would say that they are consciously using generative AI or AI, but other people would say that no, I'm not using it, but they just don't know it because, as we mentioned, this kind of technologies are integrated all over the industry. So I ask um OpenAI's ChatGPT to generate an image using this list of technologies that are now integrated in the education and research space relative to the AI landscape. So if you can see here, um, this kind of technology, ChatGPT is not that um powerful when it comes to generating images. There is Midjourney and other kinds of Gen AI or AI that is useful when it comes to um images or image creation or generation. So I just asked um ChatGPT to do what. So you can see there the integrations of so many icons and symbols that are quite familiar that basically gives us an idea of how this AI is integrated to the sector, to education and research. Now, I'll be going through some of the use cases along this certain kinds of technology and how it is now changing and transforming the landscape of education and research. Let's start with intelligent tutoring systems. So maybe some of us have experienced tutoring someone or some of us have been tutored before. So now the thing is AI gives, of course, or provides the personalized learning experience. Again, as I mentioned, because learners have different learning styles nowadays, and the advantage that it gives us is that there are personalized learning experiences. There are real-time feedback that we can get from the system, and there's adaptability to different learning paces. And while on the flip side of things, on the other hand, there are some disadvantages, which is, for example, limitation to specific subjects, or it may not address complex questions. And of course, if you're building it from scratch, there will be high development costs. I just came into an interview in in a hotel here in Manila, and I've seen this little girl, a grade schooler, who is actually doing like a tutor kind of thing. So it's a remote one. There is like an embedded material in the platform that they're using that is somehow tailored to the needs of this particular student, but they're actually in group, some sort of that, and someone supervises. Unlike before that you need to like do one is to one, there's also some sort or level of personalization that can be made even if you are like in a group, some sort of setup. So there are like tutoring tools like Mathia, MathStream, IBM Watson provides a basis for this one. So there's a lot of thing that comes into simulation, interactive learning, in subjects or even in complex subjects that requires some level of gamification or integration of fun into learning. So that is for intelligent tutoring systems. For learning management systems, for example, in our case, we also have our own learning management system. But I would have to admit that we are still in the process of stabilizing the system. It's been running for about 2 years, and we are planning to integrate also things like customization of pathways to our learners. Right now, we have about 22 or 21,000 learners coming from, most of them are coming from the Philippines. But if you would be interested to check our platform, I can share the platform to our hosts, and it can be shared via email, as well as I can also share some free e-learning courses that generates free e-certificates if you would want. But going back into the AI-powered learning management system, now, as we may know, during the pandemic, it has been a quite popular platform, the learning management system. Now, with the integration of AI, it helps analyze student engagement and performance to help instructors or faculty members to adapt to their teaching strategies and content. Because in the past, what we do is after the semester or after the term, we get or solicit the feedback, and then that's the time that we basically adjust for the next term. Unlike now, with if your students are in the LMS, then you can actually analyze their engagement, so you can create and have adaptive teaching strategies even mid of the term or middle of the term, and you can also track student progress. While of course there might be a post of some risk in privacy concerns with data that is being used in the LMS, which is addressable by data privacy concerns and statements, may require high IT infrastructure and not always intuitive. So this is based on several sources, of course. Now, if you look into the actual use cases, course progression tracking, automated grading, and student engagement insights are the key concepts and key insights that we can get from the use of AI integrated to this learning management system, right? So next would be natural language processing for language learning. So again, as I mentioned, we are not just talking about the undergraduate or college level education. We are also after professional education. This one is another use case. So NLP helps in language acquisition by understanding, processing, and responding to human languages, making it easier for students to learn language interactively. I'm not quite sure. Maybe most of you are quite also familiar with IELTS. So it's the International English Language test score requirement. For example, if you want to study or work outside your own country where English is not your native language, so you have to apply for it. So imagine how tedious it can be. But with introduction of this kind of technologies, NLP is integrated with language learning like Duolingo. I don't know if you've heard of it. I've used it. It's actually very interactive and very easy to use. So it improves the learning process by having these integrations. While other might still find, depending on your learning style, I would say, having struggles with nuanced languages or limited cultural understanding. But top of it, really, it can accelerate the way how you learn a new language from what I've experienced. Assessment is also there. Feedback is also there. So unlike, for example, if you're just doing it by yourself, reading books, for example, to prepare for, let's say, IELTS, then it's gonna be harder for you. Unlike if you have this, okay, and your students, of course. For research, of course, AI powered research tools. I don't know if you've been if you're here, you're a researcher or you're teaching research. I would say that for my case, when I started my paper on, so my paper is basically focused on understanding intention factors that affects intention of industrial engineers here in the Philippines to take what is called the certification for industrial engineers. So and then I view several frameworks like the theory of plant behavior, which is a very used framework already, utilized framework. Um but I've integrated it with the perceived value theory or PVT. It's actually a published paper already. But when I was doing my research, the first time that I'm actually collecting the related literature, I really find it hard to look for highly related literature because it's an emerging topic. Well, most especially I mean I would say globally because the two frameworks that has been integrated, the PVT and TPB, were not integrated that much. I mean, maybe there's like about 10 good paper that I've seen. So with tools like AI powered research tools, it can accelerate the starting point of gathering related literature, finding, of course, relevant literature, and summarizes complex information or insights that are coming from this published papers. Of course, I also experienced myself using ChatGPT. I was so happy when I typed to search the internet for a related literature. I was so happy that's like a paper was mentioned, and then when I checked the paper, it was the early times of Chat GPT that it hallucinated, so meaning it provided a wrong citation, like it just created some citation of sort just to provide something. But things really changed significantly. And I'll be showing you also later on some of the tools that I'm using. So like the potentiality for bias can still be there. So you have to really be critical on the output. You may miss relevant niche studies. So this is where I would say prompt engineering will come into the picture if you're using Gen AI or other LLMs or large language models or GPT. Uh, pre-trained models. Well, you can check for Iris .ai and Semantic Scholar for literature reviews and for summarization. And later on, I'll be sharing with you tools that I'm actually using personally. For if you are checking essays, a lot of essays, I think you're quite familiar with Turnitin for published papers. Grammarly started as a grammar checker, but with the integration of AI, it can also detect now plagiarism and similarity index. So these systems use AI to evaluate essays, provide grammar and style feedback, and check for plagiarism, supporting both students and educators and researchers like ourselves. So quick feedback for the students, consistent grading standards, to break the bias, for example, reduce educator workload. But on the other hand, of course, there's going to be limited understanding of creativity, can misinterpret context, and risk of over reliance. I'm actually quite guilty on the third bullet. I don't know if I'm being so vulnerable right now that I really want to show how I'm using the tools. Like for example, I've been checking also some use cases from our students. But now because I've trained the model, I am actually using that model to check um whether the use case that has been submitted is good or not good. So how do I manage whether the maintenance or sustenance of the model? Because for models like if you're using a technology that follows or that integrates AI or any machine learning algorithm or model or any analytics, I would say, I think the thing is that you have to maintain it. So just like any machine, you have to check whether it's still functioning the way you're expecting it to be. So I'm actually doing random checks, and so far, I think it's been helping us really in our side of business, providing the quick feedback that our learners need. So that's how these tools are used and from my POV of how we use it. We also have predictive analytics application in education, like the use of AI to analyze student data to predict academic success or risk of dropout, allowing early interventions to support students. And I think just like what I've mentioned earlier, that if you're taking action after the fact, so for example, after the term, then you cannot do as much as when you can do interventions mid or maybe as you start the term or semester or middle of it. So you can do early intervention depending on the features or the input variables that you're looking at to predict possible dropout so that you can have the intervention to the students. Okay, so again, data would be the first and foremost requirement for this. Just like the previous use case, there will be some privacy issues with data. Uh, it could lead to stigmatization, for example, that because these are predictions, and we know predictions are not 100%. But what we're trying to figure out is that, or what we're trying to get from the insight is the help that we can produce early intervention. But again, we need to balance so that we will not put these students into an awkward position or awkward situation. Okay. So Civitas Learning predicts students at risk of dropping out, and there's also core success forecasting, which analyzes data to identify students that likely to succeed or struggle, and resource allocations on, for example, who are students that might need the help when it comes to tutoring and whatnot, or remedial classes or any kind of intervention that you can think of. Okay. We're quite very familiar with chatbots for student support. This is like a dream for me in our own platform because it basically cuts the need for um like mentors to be like awake 24 hours like in a day, right? I mean, because educators, I mean mentors for in our space, they follow like an 8 to 5 day job, of course, or at max of 12. So, and even myself, I need to sleep, right? But what I'm trying to say is not to cut and not to take away their jobs, but basically deload them a little bit so that they can focus on more value adding tasks. And this is basically how chatbots is becoming popular when it comes to making the business more productive, or in the landscape of education, probably giving educators a little bit of breathing space of all the things that they're doing. So with this, basically the basic support that is needed by the learners can be addressed. And this is being practiced at Georgia State University, and IBM Watson has good learning LLMs that you can make use of, and well, basically can be integrated into other technologies that are available. I just want to focus on the use case on the mental health resources. So of course, we cannot say that every student will do the task, for example, as early as possible. Some students, based on their learning behavior and patterns, can do this like towards the deadline. And if you are not available, for example, as an educator, like the night before the submission, again catering to every profile of students, then this kind of technologies can be really helpful for them. Okay, so that's for chatbots. And there are also AI enhanced virtual reality and augmented reality, which combines or provides immersive learning environments for subjects like biology, chemistry, enhancing engagement and understanding. So from what I've seen, there are modules that are being created in some advanced and developing countries on how they teach laboratories, not only confined in the typical laboratory, but creating VR and AR, augmented reality scenarios wherein you're really like inside a, for example, a power plant or a manufacturing plant, some sort of that. And in this use case, this Z space is using it for medical training on virtual cadaver for anatomy practice. Can you believe that? Science Labs, Labster has created virtual lab environments for chemistry experiments. So there's a lot of, good use case on VR and AR. It's just probably the need, yeah, it says here, the expensive hardware requirements and the need for high technological skills. But in the professional education space, there are also training provider, professional education provider that is using modules to, for example, in safety, they cannot be in the actual manufacturing plant or in the actual facility. So they will put the module inside an AR, and it's like they're kind of doing it like a safety walk or safety audit, but they're not leaving the hotel room or the learning facility, but they can see the simulated space wherein they can audit, so some sort of that. So those are some of the use cases. And then of course, for if you have research and then you've collected data, there should be also data analysis tools. And the 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 advantage of using data analysis tools is that it speeds up the data analysis, it improves accuracy, and handles large data sets. Tools like MATLAB, Open for Innovation, or KNIME. So these are tools. For my case, I'm using SPSS, I'm using Minitab, I'm using I I have to learn Python, and for my PhD, what else? Later on I'll show you an AI that can be used for this kind of analysis, especially for your research data. So the disadvantage would be limited to specific data sets, risk of over automation, and may require expert oversight. So I think this like it's a similar thing. If you use any technology, specifically AI integrated tools, you have to understand what will be the output, because you're using the tools to generate or to make the process faster, not exactly just to copy the output. I hope that it's clear for everyone in this particular session, or if you're watching this recording. Okay, so visualization, creating models, machine learning models, or other kind of models, statistical models, would be faster and easier using automated research and data analysis tools, just like what I mentioned. Speech recognition also is helping in the wide landscape and spectrum of education, helping students with disabilities by converting spoken words into text and facilitating accessibility in the classrooms. Of course, this is a technology that is promoting, of course, inclusivity and diversity. So in the use cases, you see also lecture transcription, converting spoken lectures into text for students with hearing impairments, real-time language support by translating and transcribing lectures for non-native speakers, and assistive technologies. So Google Cloud and Microsoft are some of the brands that are doing good things, great things on this side of technology integrated with AI. And of course, you may be familiar with Coursera and EDX under content recommendation systems, educational content to be specific or course content to be specific. So the personalization that they can offer you depending on the courses that you've taken, your profile that you've provided based on your data, and matching them with your interest and boosting your course engagement, guiding you along the way are some of the benefits. So of course there would, depending on the courses inside the platform, that would be the limitation because the data set would be just within the platform if that's how the model works. So course suggestion, customized curriculum pathways, and professional development recommendations when it comes to certifications or courses are just some of the good things that content recommendation systems powered by AI can provide to us. And of course, data collection, as I mentioned, and analysis. There's also like some certain platforms like Power BI that we can use. This Power BI, I would say, is useful and is being used in the industry. While for education, as I have mentioned, some few platforms and softwares that is being used. So again, these are the list of some of the technologies that are being integrated in the education and research space with that is powered by AI. Now, what are the benefits of AI in education research? As we mentioned reiteratively in our previous discussions, personalization, efficiency, enhance accessibility, and data-driven insights. All of this because uh, when we use technologies like AI, you cannot use it without data as its basis and data as its fuel. So really data-driven is already there. So this particular system that is being followed by AI as a technology now empowers us, the users, to use them as a tool so that we can make our lives and work easier and better. So that's, I think, that is the main benefit of using this kind of tools. So what are the challenges? The challenges, however, comes into of course data privacy. If there's a lot of data that the models of these tools, that of this AI frameworks that we are using, integrated to these tools are using, of course we have to be very careful. We have to thread very carefully when it comes to the data privacy. So for example, the your own data that you're giving out to the platforms and system that you're using where AI is being used. So you have to be very careful, as well as for your learners, for your students, or for every stakeholders that you are dealing with. Either you're doing the day in, day out for the education or you're doing research. The bias and fairness also is just one. So just like what you've seen, there are some technologies that are being used for grading systems and whatnot. So you have to make sure that the model that you're using When I say model, this is like the model that is being used by the technology that you're using. So you have to understand also how it operates, so that you know whether what would be, for my case, what would be the frequency of checking, for bias and for maintaining fairness. Reliability, of course, I'm quite guilty on this one, because it really provides a lot of productivity enhancements for the work that I do, either both for the business and the research side of things. So I am becoming over reliant on AI. So, but from time to time, I set it within my personal practice that I have to check again for reliability purposes, and from time to time give myself the time to think for myself because if you have a lot of things to do, just for like again for my context as an entrepreneur and juggling all the stuff, you would want to use tools, but again you have to be very responsible and make sure that there is still ethics attached to how you deal with this kind of utilization of the tools. Job impact, in a macroeconomics perspective, there's a lot of issues when it comes to the impact of AI in the space. Not only in education, but in general, in the general industry. There are um there are a lot of what do you call this, requests for policies to. I think there's an open microphone. Maybe you can check, our host, please. Thank you. All right. So there's a lot of what do you call this, requests, so that in a global scale, a policy concerning the use of AI, how it affects jobs and impacts the economy should be taken into consideration and should be put into policies already. And then of course, the mitigating measures that is tied up with the challenges and ethical consideration, like transparent algorithms, how the model works, and how data is being used to the extent of the tools that are powered by AI. So when we talk about related policies, there's this policies, and briefly I'm gonna share with you so that you know how things are progressing when it comes to policy in the space of AI integrated in the education and research sector. So there is one from the UNESCO guidance for policymakers on AI in education, published 2021, which covers, if you want to read them, they're free to download. I'm just give you what are the contents of this basis or reference for policy making. So equity and inclusion, capacity building, ethical use, privacy and data protection, and curriculum integration, as UNESCO directs this to, of course, um, policymakers in the education space. For the OECD.ai, they have what is called the Policy Observatory. They have talk about in this particular handbook transparency and accountability, how systems should be transparent and accountable, the global collaboration that is needed, responsible innovation that promotes research and innovation in AI that aligns with public values and ethical standards, and education skills development. If you can still remember, one of the three individuals in the previous video about Education 4.0 mentioned about the the need for a formal training to be integrated in the education system that we are having, because the technology is progressing quite fast, but our education system is not. So that is why one of the bullets that you will be seeing in the next couple of basis for policies are also pointing out into education skills development. The Global AI Research Agenda by the U.S. Department of State, published 2024, focus also on international cooperation, ethical standards, inclusivity, which talks about ensuring AI benefits on all citizens across the globe, and the research and development also. On another playbook made by the US government, specifically the USAID, the AI in Global Development Playbook, it focuses on support for education, ethics and responsible use, capacity building, and monitoring and evaluation. If you can see here on the first four or on the previous handbooks, the AI in Global Development Playbook have mentioned about monitoring and evaluation, which basically I have mentioned also when I talk about monitoring and sustenance of models. So this one talks about, of course, the macroeconomics of things. And for the European Union, there is the EU AI Act published 2021, which basically integrates the risk-based approach with stricter regulations for high-risk applications like education, transparency requirements, human oversight. So meaning there should be still human component or the man component of the system that oversees how the models are being used, the technologies are being utilized. Data governance, and this one is very unique to this particular handbook because it talks about data governance, of course, but more strongly on penalties for non-compliance, specifically for companies that fail to meet the set standards by this particular act. So these are some of the related policies that are used in AI in education and research. Now, there's also in the global landscape, I just curated some of the organizations or universities, institutions. So these are from Cambridge, Columbia University, the National Institutes of Health, and Massachusetts Institute of Technology, or MIT. And these are some of their policies when it comes to use of AI, specifically in research. So for Cambridge, there are restrictions on authorship, that AI cannot be listed as an author, transparency requirements, authors must disclose and explain any AI usage in their publications, and plagiarism prevention. AI-generated content must not infringe on existing works, upholding originality and proper citation. For Columbia University, they're more into data privacy, accuracy verification, bias mitigation, and disclosure obligations. So for the National Institutes of Health, they're more specific into the policy applicability, clarifying how existing NIH policies apply to AI-related research covering participant protections, intellectual property, and peer review. And of course, the ethical considerations. For MIT, it's more of regulatory development, advocating for regulations that evolve alongside AI technologies to ensure safety and efficacy, and purpose identification, recommending that AI system provides clearly defined intended purpose before any use or deployment. So that's for the global landscape. Here in Asia, based on my research, we have the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology on AI ethics and governance. They have this Center for Artificial Intelligence Research, or CARE. The AI Research Institutes of Tsinghua University. And for NUS, we have the AI Collaboration and Talent Development Initiative from this university. From the Philippines, of course, I'm from the Philippines. I need to update you guys what's happening here in the side of the world. The government has just mandated the Republic Act, number 11981, also known as the Tatak Pinoy Act, or Proudly Filipino Act in English, and supported by the Asian Development Bank. So this basically aims to drive innovation, bolster economy, and improve the lives of Filipinos through strategic AI adoption. And with that, there is the establishment of the CAIR, or Center for Artificial Intelligence Research, that harnesses the transformative power of AI to address pressing societal industrial challenges, fuel economic growth, and promote inclusive development. So in terms of universities, the University of the Philippines, here in the Philippines, of course, um, they have like principles for responsible use of AI for their students, and there is a committee called UP AI Advancement Committee to create an empowering environment for open discussion on AI's benefits and concerns, leading to better policies and guidelines. So from what I've seen as a person in the education space, in the professional education space, I'm not related anymore to any university, except for being a student at Mapua University. But I see it as a advisory board member for industrial engineering programs and operations management programs. So I'm basically championing the use of AI and how AI can be ethically and purposively used to enhance the way how education is happening in the educational institutions, as well as how teachers can be challenged even further to think of ways on how we can be more critical and creative on how to use and integrate this kind of technologies, because it's becoming like a problem for educators, but we have to also look into the angle or side of things wherein this should be tools that should help us to make our work easier and faster, because we have to accept that if we are using it as an educator, students are also, they have to also have the benefit to use it because the technology is already there. Some universities here in the Philippines, what they do is they block the IP address of these sites. But if they are connected into the university's internet service, yes. But if they use their own data to access the site, then that defeats the purpose. The control is, it doesn't serve its purpose. So it's really a matter of really thinking on how we can integrate this kind of things, technologies and emerging practices in the way how we do our work as in education and in research. So when it comes to AI techniques for data collection, I think I'll about to end in the next 15 minutes. So there are like automated surveys and chatbot-based questionnaires. In my research, I haven't used this before, but I've seen some use cases for data collection. I've seen also AI enhanced observational data collection, but when you say observational data collection, it's basically with the use of cameras or image processing, computer vision, and of course, there's also natural language processing for data collection. So let's look into some of the use cases. Okay, I've curated some of for your reference. So we have for automated surveys and chatbot-based questionnaires, Georgia State's Pounce chatbot has helped reduce summer melt or when students are admitted and fail to enroll by 22% for freshman students. So they collect the data and student challenges and provide real-time support. For University of Murcia's Moodle chatbot, the chatbot conducts surveys and collects feedback on course content and delivery, which helps educators understand student satisfaction and areas for improvement. For Australian Catholic University, the automated surveys and chatbot-based questionnaires offer real-time responses and which makes the survey process engaging and efficient. With this, the chatbot analyze responses and provide insights to educators, helping the institution tailor student services to what has been taken from as insights from the survey. For AI-enhanced observational data collection, Carnegie Mellon University's The Classroom Insight Project have installed cameras and AI algorithms that captures and analyzes students' body language and facial expression to gauge attention levels. While for Stanford Online, facial recognition at in their online courses is being tracked while taking their virtual classes, and the system measures engagement levels and detects frustration or confusion, allowing instructors to intervene when students struggle. So you could just because you could just imagine, and I can attest to this myself because I used to also teach both in university and the professional education landscape. And it's hard when you're just looking into your camera. Even you're seeing your student right now. For example, just this very moment, I don't see how are you reacting to the things that like spitting here for the last hour. Okay, but with this kind of technology, of course, they are being um uh augmented to so that the process of knowledge transfer and whatnot can be customized. But then again, if you see here, there's a lot of data that is being involved. That is why, on the flip side, we have to be very, very aware and conscious of the data that is being collected. Now, in China, classrooms are being monitored through cameras. The system can detect whether students are paying attention, sleeping, or distracted. So, of course, this will help teachers to identify interventions to those that are disengaged and that need support. While this use case has raised privacy concerns, it shows that potential of AI in observational data collection has really high potential. And then for NLPs, for data collection, so this one, you can just imagine the feedback. So Harvard University's use of NLP on course evaluation uses AI to capture to capture and analyze students' body language and facial expression to gauge attention levels. Um, for the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA, they use it for social media analysis, sentiment analysis, so to help them identify potential mental health issues, academics and campus facilities, and the university use it to identify emerging issues and concerns among students. While for University of Michigan's analysis of online forums, so these are purely text, so they've used it to analyze student discussions. Now the system identifies topics that students find challenging or confusing, and this is used by instructors to adjust course content and provide additional support where needed, because we have to accept most of the times uh or I don't know, maybe in my time it's the thing. I'm not quite sure how it works right now, but the evaluation might not give us the full context of like the written evaluation, but in the space where students are free to to exchange information or express their thoughts, there is where the more insight can be taken from. That is why they have applied this kind of technologies in those kind of spaces like forums and whatnot. So that is for AI techniques for data collection. For the actual research, actual data analysis for research, we have machine learning algorithms for predictive analytics, we have NLP for sentiment analysis and text mining, and we have clustering and classification algorithms. So just like the first segment of the tools for data for research, I have also some use cases that I curated. So for machine learning, like for the University of Central Florida's predictive analytics model, so they can um, analyze historical data and model and predict which students are likely to struggle academically. So again, the resources can be optimally used for the interventions. For Georgia State University, I think we've talked about this, so I'm going to skip this one. For ASU or Arizona State University, the retention program of the university is based on predictive models which identifies first-year students at risk of dropping out, etc. So if you can see, these are use cases at the same time can be good starting point for research. If you haven't done any of this in your university or in your space, then you can actually get the what do you call this the inspiration to do this and to apply this into your space. For NLP or natural language processing, the Open University UK student feedback analysis, I think pretty similar to what we've shared, like looking into the feedback, generating the common themes, and using it as a basis for improvement for content and instruction. For the USC, analysis of social media sentiment, just like how UCLA is using it for the media, engagement in social media by the students, getting the concerns out of the context of the interactions, and the sentiment analysis as uh, defined in some of the universities that has been shared also earlier. For clustering and classification algorithms, University of Wisconsin-Madison's adaptive learning system uses clustering algorithms to group students based on learning styles and behavior patterns within the online learning platform. This is one thing that I am actually um particular with, because again, I strongly believe that learning styles really affect how effective the learning process can be completed. So this kind of technologies and integrations are really helpful. National University of Singapore's student segmentation for academic support is more of like the efficiency of allocation of resources to improve to improve student satisfaction. And Stanford's University Learning Style Classification uses classification algorithms to categorize students based on their engagement and interactions with course materials in a massively online open course platform. So those are the AI techniques for data analysis. So just to briefly share before I conclude, I just figured something new. I don't know if maybe our host can share can confirm if my what do you call this? My screen is now on the web app. Can you confirm if you can see the screen with the app? All right. I'm not sure if you're seeing this, but hopefully yes. So I just figured out something. So this one, if you're using or you're dealing with data from your research, this is like for one of my researches. So this Julius.ai is basically a helper on, like, if you want to analyze things, then you just have to put the prompt. So for example, I asked the AI to create a table comparing the average intention scores across the demographics. So I have a data on the learning intention and some columns for demographics and other factors based on my research. So what it does is to create basically a set of Python code that you can actually copy and paste in your notebooks. Uh, and then there's also an actual output. So you see here, there's the data tables, and then there is this kind of visualization. Okay, and you can also have these kinds of visualization. So you can just have put the prompts. For example, create intention scores by gender or by sex. So this one is the visualization, and then I also have intention scores by location. So also, if you can see here, if there are if again, you have to understand the name of your columns. But if you see here, there are some portion that there are some errors like this one in the code. If you're into using Python, you might be quite familiar. So what happens is that um the AI will recognize that and will basically correct that, some sort of that. So if you're also creating models, for example, for my case, I want to create a structural equation model. So I just, I just tried it before doing this session. So you see here, there's a lot of codes here. So there are certain platforms like the PLS SEM for structural equation modeling. But this particular AI was able to successfully create a model. This is just a base model because I just prompted a very generic one. Like I just asked the AI to this particular tool to like create a structural equation model without giving context on what are the connections and whatnot. But for a generic one, it's actually good. I mean, these are things that you can find in your research because you have to like put in your results and discussion. So that gives a little bit of like a speed bump on, or maybe you're having some writer's block or researcher's block of some sort, then this one is something that you can use. But of course, then again, you have to check and counter check if it's giving the right level of insights. Okay? So that's one for data analysis. For uh, for the one that I've used when I was in my darkest times when doing my first research paper of not having enough RLs because the or really the literature because the topic was quite an emerging one. So I found out Consensus. Consensus is an app that is outside ChatGPT, but ChatGPT has it ChatGPT has Consensus inside it now. So it's basically you can ask this particular tool of, for example, if I'm trying to find the connection between, so is there a significant, let's say, relationship between mental health and workplace productivity? During the earlier times, what happens when you do this in the chat GPT based model, it would give and hallucinate. It will hallucinate and give you a lot of fabricated studies that are not really out there. I mean, that is not really existing. But now, I just want to share how the models have improved. So you see here that there are like the evidence, workplace conditions, mental health and impact. So if we try to so let's so I think we need to wait for the prompt to finish. So if you click this, what happens or what will happen is that it will direct you to, let's say for this one, it will direct you to a paper that you can check under Semantic Scholar. So that's basically how it's working right now. Now, if you're like building like your framework or just doing your preliminary studies, so these are things that you can use. Um, some would suggest Perplexity, but for my case, again, I'm just sharing my personal take and personal consumption of the tools. So those are my go-to tools. So what does the future look like when it comes to AI? And I'm about to end actually. AI powered lifelong learning. So for example, for my case, whenever I need support, I go to ChatGPT because that's something that I find myself really comfortable using. So I ask ChatGPT on things that I don't know, and it's like really a conversational learning assistant for me. Virtual classrooms will be of utilization in both education and industrial setup. AI in scientific discovery. We're now heading to the adoption wherein AI is being used to make scientific discovery faster. And but of course, there's always this thing about ethics and regulation that will always play its part. Okay. So what are my reflections as I end? AI is revolutionizing data collection. Sorry. So what are my reflections from this talk on my short sharing on AI in education research? Number one, AI is revolutionizing data collection and analysis in the education and research sector. Predictive analytics enables proactive support for students. NLP offers qualitative insights to student engagement and satisfaction. Clustering and classification facilitates personalized learning. Ethics, privacy, and policies are essential considerations for AI implementation. And as I said earlier, AI or AI integrated or AI powered tools are tools that we need to use so that we can make our work and lives easier, faster, more comfortable. But it's up to us how we would put the level of criticality when it comes to the output that it provides. So you have to be very responsible and you have to make sure that there's always a level of ethical consideration that is always practiced when it comes to the use of these tools or emerging tools. With that, I think I reached the conclusion of my presentation. Thank you for those people who have joined the session, and I would be happy to connect with you all in LinkedIn and via Google Scholar. I have my papers there that you can use as a reference, or if you're looking for collaborations for research, I am also very open to do that. Thank you very much, and I'm giving back the floor to our host. Thank you. Hello, do we have our host?
Hi. So we would like to invite any questions or discussions now. So if there are any thoughts you'd like to share, if you wish to explore any, as in to ask any questions or anything that you want to ask, so this time is yours. So Dr. Felix is here still. You all can ask anything related to what he discussed now. You all can either raise your hand or drop a message on the chat box, or you all can simply unmute and ask anything if you all do have any questions. No questions? Okay. Um, Okay, so thank you so much for being part of today's global webinar on AI in education and research. So AI is new for all of us, and we are all still figuring it out together as it evolves. So I think we've all walked away with something valuable today, and it's been great to hear such diverse and insightful perspectives. So a big thank you to Dr. Felix for sharing your expertise and making this session very informative. And I also encourage all of you to take the learnings from this session and explore how AI can be used to amplify your work and make a difference in our communities. So, as we have come to the end of this webinar series, I would like to thank Dr. Felix once again for your valuable insights on AI in education and research. Your contributions have significantly enhanced our understanding of this important topic. To our esteemed audience, your active participation and engagement have been invaluable. We appreciate your contributions to today's discussion. And please note, sorry, yes, Bandula? Sorry. Lara, do you have a question?
No questions.
Okay, great. I also want to let you all know that your certificates of attendance will be provided within the next 2 weeks. So I wish everyone a wonderful evening ahead or a wonderful day ahead. So thank you once again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at our future webinars.
Thank you. Have a nice day to you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Felix.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, Doctor.
Thank you.